Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are sorry about the delay, but I thank all of you for making the time to come here today and join us on this very momentous and proud occasion for our family. We have gathered here today to celebrate and relaunch the complete works of our father, Dr. Amir Hasan. Prior to coming here, we were fortunate to have had the privilege and the opportunity to present the first set of these books to our President, Her Excellency Srimati Droupadi Murmu. She was hugely appreciative of the books. She went through each one of them and has promised to read all of them. She talked about the resilience, the unity and the pride of more than 700 tribes which exist in India. And we had a long conversation. My sister explained the context and the books to her, and she was very attentive. And then after we completed, she also talked to us for a while about the tribals in India, about the role of administration, and appreciated the fact that our father, being in administration, tried to do research on the tribals, to give them job opportunities, and so she was very appreciative of that. So we are immensely grateful to her. Today we have curated together a mix of different reflections of eminent scholars on video and in person on the works of our father. We hope you will appreciate it. I thank you again for coming to join us, which can only be described for our family as an emotional journey. This program should take about 40 minutes. We invite all of you to join us for lunch thereafter. On behalf of the family, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Mr. Mittal of BR Publishing Corporation, with whom our relationship now spreads over 2 generations, as well as to my colleague Harikesh, without whose support the relaunch would not have been possible. I also welcome Professor Emeritus Vijay S. Sahai, whom we'll have the opportunity of listening to in a short while. So without further ado, may I please invite Dr. Amir Hasan, my elder sister, and co-author in some of Daddy's works, and whose hard work for more than a year has led to this relaunch, to deliver her address. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and namaskar to everyone. Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and namaskar to everyone present here. It is with immense pleasure and pride that I stand before you today, forgive me for sitting, to share the memories of Dr. Amir Hasan as a father and as a co-author. Being my father's daughter has been a multifaceted experience for Dr. Amir Hasan. Was very unconventional. He disregarded social and cultural impositions and often threw caution to the winds. His sons would second me heartily in my narrative if their memories could go back as far back as mine. And Dr. Hasan's famous tongue-in-cheek humor and witty one-liners could fill a whole book. I call upon the lads to remember the time when they were all down with the virus. And he took one of them as a sample to the doctor. He said they are all down with the same bug, so please treat one and they all get the same prescription. So, the doctor was a little confused and he said, I was expecting 4 patients. And then there was only one, so Daddy says that they were too many. So this one is a sample. On occasions, he took us and the dogs out in his old car, his loyal Austin A40 Devon. It is, of course, impossible to forget the time when we came home with a smoking chassis. To my mother's wrath, which he said was steamier than the smoking chassis. He had his MasterChef moments when he dished out omelettes and dal moat to us. This is a scrumptious combination for those who know it. He only left the kitchen when the pots and pans had been successfully cremated, and the windows opened to release the carbon dioxide. For scientists we are, and scientists we remain. That's what he said. Being my father's daughter led me to the less trodden paths. I went to boarding school at the age of 11, moved to college at 16, published my first book at 21. I learned to value the environment through multiple trips to the hills, the lakes, and the jungles. I sat on a machan to write nature poetry. Elders told my father, "Ladkiyan aise nahi palti." On the day of my engagement, he informs my mother that he will not be available for the ceremony. He had some important work in Missouri. So she had to handle it on her own, and she was a woman of great resilience, and she got through the day smoothly. As a co-author, I was destined to have my own moments of hard labor. He was neither lenient nor kind as far as the book of folklore was concerned. I sat up nights to search for the right word. For every shade of thought, there is a specific word. Find it. I checked the last for the nuances and the internal rhythms. I worked on a sequence of tenses, punctuation, grammatical errors, until the page before me had no scope for a red line. And that was my special moment of success. And he boasted about me to all and sundry. The lessons I learnt were invaluable and influenced my reading, listening, speaking, and writing skills. He taught me the craft of writing coherently. I remember going with him everywhere. I trotted behind him to museums, libraries, monuments, and some forgotten musty schools and old houses that were spilling wordy treasures. Which it was my thrill to encase in notes and diaries, in maps and diagrams. And finally, the visit to the Raj Bhavan. We were announced, Amir Hasan and daughter. And there it was, my first book in the governor's hand. And as he turned the crisp, rustling pages, our joys knew no bounds. Life completely turns a full circle today, as my siblings and I stand here with a second edition of the full collection. a very humble tribute to the knowledge assimilated by our father. It must now be disseminated around the academia and be linked with new research, unfolding like a bolt of tapestry before eager new eyes. Thank you.
So the year was 1992. The place, Silicon Valley. And that's when my father and mother came to visit us, literally to check out, because we were newly married. Lara and I had just gotten married, and it was to check us out. But my father had another agenda. He actually went to several universities, including the University of California at Santa Cruz, as well as Stanford, University of Kentucky, and so on. And that was to interact with faculty that were working on tribals in the US. Now, one of the places was, one of the professors he met was a gentleman called Trilokinath Pandey, who is now a professor emeritus at University of California, Santa Cruz. We were able to get in touch with him again and have him record an interview. The gentleman is 84 years old at this time, considered a world authority. And let's roll the video and listen to him.
Hello everybody, my name is Trilokinath Pandey and I'm a professor emeritus of anthropology at the University of California, Santa Cruz. This is my 50th year at the university. I'm very happy to know that the brilliant and very caring and talented children of Begum Fatima and Amir Hasan Sahibs are celebrating the life and works of their father. He was an eminent civil servant and he spent his entire professional life serving the state of Uttar Pradesh, especially its tribal population. I wish I were at the India International Center in New Delhi to participate in person in this celebration. My wife Annapurna and I had the privilege of hosting the Hassans at our home in Santa Cruz on August 5, 1992. Hasan Sahib was a decade older, but we began our interest in UP tribes the same year, 1962. I was a graduate student in anthropology at Lucknow University and had gone to Gonda district in the Tarai region to study the Danguriya Tharus. The Tharus now have a population of close to 1 million, but 70% of them live in the Tarai region in Nepal. A British civil officer, William Cook, had mentioned that there were 73 sections or subgroups among the Tharus. There were several studies of the Rana Tharus, but very few of the Danguriya Tharus. A Chinese scholar, C.T. Hu, worked there in 1950s and published 2 papers on their socio-cultural life. But there is hardly anything written about them. As a result, very few anthropologists know about them. My Lucknow professor, D.M. Majumdar, had written a general account of the Tharu life in his book, The Fortunes of Primitive Tribes, based on the data he collected during the 1941 census. These were very sketchy accounts of Tharu culture and society until 1993, when Dr. Hassan's book, The Affairs of an Indian Tribe, the story of my Tharu relatives appeared posthumously. This is a longitudinal account of Tharu life he had studied over a decade, focused on a village he called Mary Hamlet, situated in Kheri district, close to Indo-Nepal border. This is a unique ethnographic study because here the field worker, the observer Dr. Hasan, does not objectify the observed, his Tharu friends, but considers them his close relatives. And this is really remarkable. On several occasions, he took his family to visit with them, and his children had fond memories of the time they spent with their Tharu relatives. I can easily go on commenting on his other books, but it will be dry and boring to the audience on this celebratory occasion. There are just 2 points I want to make in conclusion. One, tribe in India is a constitutional category. It was introduced by the British in the 19th century, and the framers of the Constitution of India continued using it in the Constitution. But the irony is that when Dr. Hasan and I began our work with tribes in UP, the most populous state in the country, the government of the state did not recognize them. They were not listed in the 5th schedule because the powerful Chief Minister Govind Ballabh Pant kept saying that there are tribes in Bihar, in Odisha, in Australia, in Africa, but not in UP. When he moved to New Delhi as the Home Minister, he maintained the same view. Since it is the Home Ministry which makes the decision to recognize, it was only after he was gone that in 1967, 5 of the tribal communities of UP were included in the schedule. I am sure that Dr. Hasan had a role in making that important decision. 2, I was so impressed by his candid analysis of tribal administration and tribal development in India that I decided to propose him for a Regents Professorship at the University of California. I consulted with my senior colleague, Professor Gerald Berman of UC Berkeley, who had worked with tribals of Tarai in UP and Nepal, as well as 2 of the leading geographers of the Tarai, Professor Benny Farmer of Cambridge University, my friend, and Professor Paul Curran of the University of Kentucky. Dr. Hasan had visited with Professor Curran in Kentucky, and he was very happy to make his acquaintance. They were glad to support my nomination for the Regents Professorship of Dr. Hasan, the only faculty appointment made by the President of the University. Sadly, it did not happen. Dr. Hasan passed away on November 13, 1992. He was too young to go. Had he come to the University of California, I was planning to collaborate with him in doing a controlled comparative study of Tharu culture and society using various studies of Danguria and Rana Tharus. It would have been an important contribution to anthropology. I'm happy to say that Dr. Hasan will continue to live in the memories of his family and friends and in the 12 volumes of his works on display in this celebration. Thank you, everybody.
Former head, Department of Anthropology, University of Allahabad, did his BA honors and MA in Anthropology with first position in first class from Ranchi University. He obtained PhD for his fascinating research work on the Nicobar Archipelago under the supervision of Professor L.P. Vidyarthi. Professor Sahai's main areas of interest in anthropology have been teaching anthropological theories, and conducting field researches amongst the most primitive tribal groups of our country, particularly the primitive tribes of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Author of a number of books and over 50 research papers, Professor Sahai is the editor-in-chief of the internationally renowned research journal, The Oriental Anthropologist, published by the Sage Publications. His latest book, Experiencing Anthropology in the Nicobar Archipelago, has been brought out by the Routledge in 2021. Professor Sahai's forthcoming book is on anthropological thought from evolutionism to postmodernism and beyond. Besides visiting and delivering a number of lectures in different universities in India and abroad, Professor Sahai was a visiting fellow to the KwaZulu Natal University, Durban, South Africa, Aarhus University, Denmark, Rajiv Gandhi Central University, Arunachal Pradesh, Vidyasagar University, Midnapur, and Kamraj University, Madurai. Professor Sahai has also been on two important committees constituted by the Government of India for protection and preservation of the dwindling tribes of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Before I ask him to speak, I'll request Professor Dr. Amir Hasan to come on stage and felicitate him.
Honorable family members of Dr. Amir Hasan, rather I would say Zanab Amir Hasan Sahab. I don't know everyone's name, so I simply say that it is one of the finest ways that I have seen to pay homage to one's father. Today in this hall, I've been watching and I'm really very, very overwhelmed and emotionally I get charged. Only a couple of days before, I received all the 12 volumes which was sent to me by the publisher, Mr. Neeraj Mittal, at the behest of Zanab Zulfikar Hasan Sahab. And certainly I didn't have time to go through all the books at a time within such a short period. But even then, I looked at all the books patiently as far as possible. Therefore, I just jotted down certain points which I wanted to share with you, particularly the anthropological elements in the writings of Dr. Amir Hasan. Certain points only which I have noted down this morning only. Well, in Dr. Amir Hasan's writings, I get confirmation of some of my own convictions about the discipline of anthropology. One of my convictions has been, which I have written in so many articles earlier, that to write a book or write an article of anthropological nature, one doesn't need a degree or a certificate or any training in anthropology. This is my conviction. I have repeatedly written in many of my articles that to write an article or a book of anthropological nature, one doesn't need any certificate or any orientation in anthropology, because my opinion is that every human being has got the potential to become an anthropologist. After all, what is anthropology? What is anthropology? Who can become an anthropologist? Are those only who have got some degree in anthropology? No, I don't believe like that. Because the main thing that is required to become an anthropologist is the inquisitiveness to know about others' culture. Inquisitiveness to know about others' culture. And I really wonder when I see so many articles and books and so many things, how inquisitive Dr. Amir Hasan must have been, that he has written so many folk tales, so many things, particularly about Lucknow also. That book, I very much appreciate the vanishing culture of Lucknow or the palace culture of Lucknow. So that inquisitiveness, well, why? That every human being is inquisitive to know about others. I can give you one small example of the Kungs of South Africa. I've been to South Africa and visited the Kung areas also. Their values are different than ours, absolutely. In our value, if somebody gives me a glass of water, I must thank him. If I don't thank him, he will consider me uneducated and boorish, But just to the contrary, among the Kungs, what happens? That even if a Kung is starving to death, and you give them food and water and everything, instead of thanking you, he will inflict obligatory insult upon you. And that sometimes it appears very ridiculous, sometimes surprising, that why do they, a very good article that is very much available in internet, you just write down, Eating Christmas in Kalahari, that has been written by Richard Lee. You study that article and you'll understand why do the Kungs, instead of thanking, they inflict obligatory insult upon the one. I don't want, because I have been told that only 10 minutes are there, so I don't give you the lecture on anthropology, But that is a worth reading article which suggests that if I narrate the story of the Kungs, everybody will be inquisitive to know why such and such things. Not only know that this is how they do, but why do they do so? That is also there. That is what I found in Dr. Amir Hasan's writings, Then another story I'm tempted to tell you, this is also available in internet. Shakespeare in the Bush, Shakespeare in the Bush, by Laura Bohannon. She's also an anthropologist, American anthropologist. Richard Lee, also an American anthropologist. She worked in Africa again among the Tiv community. So that story is worth reading. If I go into the detail, I suppose I'll be consuming more time than I'm expected to do. So these are the things which everybody would like to know, that why Tivs do such and such things. So that inquisitiveness, that is the potential of anthropology. So even without having any degree or certificate in anthropology, one can write very good anthropological books and articles, which Dr. Amir Hasan has done. That is one thing I wanted to say. Secondly, when I was reading the intimate relationship between the Tharus, men and women, and folk tales and the stories, and not only stories, but even the interviews of the informants taken by Dr. Amir Hasan, I was reminded of one of the great anthropologists, Clifford Geertz. I don't know anybody has heard it here because this is not an anthropological meet. But then Clifford Geertz, one article that is also again available in the internet, Balinese cockfight, Balinese cockfight, and he has given the thick description. His anthropology is called interpretive anthropology, and description that how the Balinese cockfight takes place, that is a wonderful article. And when I was going through the details of the interviews, I was reminded, of course, of thick description and interpretive anthropology. Now is the time that one has to really examine and reread the books of Amir Hasan and try to find out the anthropological elements which are involved in there. Now, one more thing which I would like to speak, that is rapport, R-A-P-P-O-R-T. That is the gaining of confidence of the informants. Because anthropological works are mostly based upon the information that we do. I have done my work in the Nicobar archipelago, and this is my book, Experiencing Anthropology in the Nicobar Archipelago, which Mr. Zulfikar Hasan Sahab mentioned about it. So what I want to say is that unless you have the best of the rapport with the people whom you study, whom you work, you cannot be very objective. You cannot be very pertinent and to the point. And if one reads the description and the interviews that Dr. Amir Hasan used to take, that assures that he was a very competent anthropologist. He had a tremendous knack for establishing rapport with his informants. One thing which I would like to say, that the folk songs that have been translated into English in the book, if I had been, I would have written in the dialect of the tribes also, whose folk songs I have collected, and some Awadhi songs in Awadhi language also. Directly it should have been written. If not in Devanagari script or Hindi script, then at least diacritics marks are there through which, if those folk songs were also written there, they would have been for all the time. Because I was reminded of my work when I was working in the Nicobar archipelago in Nankauri Island, when I came to know that there are ancient songs which are sung only during the Rebalier festival. Other than that, they do not. I collected those songs in my tape recorder, and in my book and thesis, I have, with the diacritic marks, I have noted down the same songs, And now, after 27 years, let me tell you, I worked in the Nicobars first in 1974-75, and then next, after 27 years, I went there again in 2002, and I was told that nobody now, everybody, only 5 or 6 people knew the ancient songs whom I had just assembled at one place and recorded, but they were no more. So those things have died out. So these are some, maybe that some of the folk songs which have been given there after some time people may not be able to recall that. So for that, if it had been done it would have added to the beauty and of the book also. This is my personal opinion, I'm sorry to say. But however, I congratulate the family and salute to the family for arranging such a homage to Dr. Amir Hasan. I also congratulate the publisher also, because they have also printed the book. At least I didn't find any misprint also there. So they also deserve congratulations. With these words, I wish to give a copy of my book to Zulfikar Sahab, and especially, Madam, for you to read this book. I will give it to you, With these words, thank you, and it was my pleasure, it was my privilege to be a part of this function. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sai. So we'll shift gears a little bit. We'll start to talk about my father's works on the Lucknow culture side. And again, I'll connect it back into, there are several people from IIT Kanpur here. Please raise your hands. So the interesting story here is this, that Rajiv Motwani, who many of you know, was on the faculty at Stanford, and he was my roommate as well. So we got to know another faculty member in the history department through him at his house, a gentleman called Dr. Ryan Perkins. Turned out that he was deeply interested, not only deeply interested, but an expert in things related to India and specifically Lucknow. I won't say more, because what we'll do is we'll play a video, and you'll see you'll see his message in there. So please go ahead and play the Ryan Perkins video, please. We are sitting down with Dr. Ryan Perkins at the beautiful Green Library at Stanford University. Dr. Perkins is the curator for South Asian Studies at Stanford. He's an expert on South Asian history, literature, and culture. With a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, he has taught at the University of Chicago and at Oxford University in the UK. He has published extensively on the history of late colonial India, including Lucknow culture. And he's proficient in 7 languages other than his native English. Now, we met first at a Stanford faculty member's house, and you blew my mind. When I heard you speak fluent Urdu, then learned that you had lived in Lucknow, and even knew my father's work. So let's start with, how did you end up in this line of work?
Thank you, Waqad. So I always had an interest in languages. So when I was in high school, I studied Japanese and Spanish. And then when I was in college in Chicago, a friend of mine who was from the UK, he had spent about 4 or 5 years on a ship going around the world. He put a big map of India on my wall and started telling me stories and encouraged me that I needed to go experience other parts of the world. And so I ended up then taking about 1.5 years out of college and spent that time in South Asia. and I really fell in love with the languages, cultures, the food, and the people. And after that, I decided I wanted to pursue further studies and went to do a PhD. And then Stanford, after having had positions at Oxford and Chicago, Stanford had created this position that they'd never had before, covering South Asia in the library. And so it was a great opportunity to build something that had not existed before. And so I've been here now for about 8.5 years.
Fascinating. And what's the story behind you encountering my father's works?
So when I was in graduate school, I was starting to focus on the works of Abdul Halim Sharad, who was the first writer of historical novels in Urdu and was from Lucknow. And I was looking at his works, and there were not many other English language materials really detailing the cultural world of Lucknow. And so when I found your father's works, I was very excited, enthusiastic, and yeah, so when you had told me that who your father was and his works, I was very excited to hear that you're going to be republishing his works. So they had a really important role in my kind of early education, especially concerning Lucknow.
And tell me about your experience in Lucknow. I understand you spent some time there.
Yeah, so I spent quite a bit of time in Lucknow, learning language and then doing research. So one of the stories that I like to tell is, so there's this like old Lucknow. And Lucknow is famous for its culture, and especially the Nawabi culture. And it was said in some of these older sources that even the rickshaw-walas would be able to recite poetry. And so one day I was taking a bicycle rickshaw to Hazratganj and was about to get off, and we had been talking in Hindi and Urdu I was talking with the rickshaw driver. And he then starts reciting this beautiful Urdu in this poetic voice, some couplets in Urdu. And right as he starts doing that, this police wala with his danda starts coming over and saying, trying to get him to leave. And so it was like this old Lucknow and this new Lucknow coming together in this way. But it was a beautiful time that I spent there, and I look forward to going back again.
How long were you there?
Let's see, I probably spent about 2.5 years in Lucknow total.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Lucknow is known for its cuisine, its foods. What were your favorites?
तो लखनऊ का खाना बहुत मशहूर है, तो मैं एक तो खाना कैसे फैसला करूं, लेकिन ये तो बास्केट चाट, जैसा आप तो जानते होंगे कि रॉयल चाट हाउस वो हजरतगंज बिल्कुल मरकज़, तो उनके पास वो बास्केट वाला चाट है, तो बहुत लजीज है. और उसके अलावा जैसे ओल्ड सिटी में गुलशन नहारी, उनका खाना बहुत लजीज है, तो मुझे बहुत अच्छी याद आती है.
So both the modern as well as the traditional, you covered them both. That's awesome. So on the occasion of the republication of my father's books, what are the thoughts that you have on their importance?
Yeah. Well, I think especially today, your father's works are really important. As a historian, I like to look at moments in the past that presented different possibilities, maybe roads that weren't quite taken. And I think with your father's work, it opens up this world of this past Lucknow, of this Ganga, Jamuni cultural world that Hindus and Muslims had created together. And I think particularly today, when I see through social media and whatever other avenues, a lot of division coming up, whether it's in America or wherever it is in the globe. And I think this work kind of reminds us of the possibilities that we have to create a different type of present, a different type of future through really working together, and kind of the heights of that. I think, I remember when I was studying Urdu in Lucknow, and I was by the Gumti River, and there was a policeman who started talking to, and his friend was with him, and he asked me, "Aap yahan kyun aaye?" और मैंने जवाब दिया कि उर्दू सीखने के लिए मैं यहाँ आया. और फिर उन्हें जवाब दिया कि लेकिन उर्दू पाकिस्तान के लिए, हिंदुस्तान में सिर्फ संस्कृत हिंदी. और फिर मैंने जवाब दिया कि लेकिन आप उर्दू अल्फाज इस्तेमाल करते हैं जब आप मुझसे बात करते हैं. तो फिर उनका दोस्त हंसने लगा, क्योंकि ये तो सच है कि हम जैसे हिंदुस्तानी हिंदी में बात नहीं कर सकते अगर हम उर्दू अल्फाज इस्तेमाल ना करें. तो जैसा अगर मैं किसी हिंदू से बात करूं तो वो कहते कि अच्छा आपको हिंदी आती है, अगर मैं किसी मुसलमान से बात करूं तो वो कहते कि अच्छा आपको उर्दू आती है. तो जैसा आप कहना चाहिए, लेकिन क्या खूबसूरत ज़बान है. तो ये तो जैसे दिल में ये है कि लखनऊ की तहज़ीब बहुत खूबसूरत थी, फिर भी आजकल तो वो निशान बाकी तो है, और ये ज़बान जो है उर्दू ज़बान तो क्या खूबसूरत ज़बान है। अगर आप हिंदी कहना चाहें, अगर आप उर्दू कहना चाहें तो कोई बात नहीं।
चलिए उसको हिंदुस्तानी कहते हैं।
हिंदुस्तानी हम भी कह सकते हैं। So, but thank you. I'm very excited for your father's work to be republished, and especially for this younger generation, for them to kind of remind themselves of who are we. We can lose sight of who we are when we lose connection with our past and with these histories. And so I think that your father's work can play a really important role continuing on in the future, and really highlighting this beautiful shared cultural world.
Well, thank you, Dr. Perkins. It has been a pleasure to discuss my father's work with you, as well as understand, the Ganga Janmi Tehzeeb that you highlighted, as to how it brought together, different kinds of people, different kinds of religions in one place, and it was certainly a unique experience that, I went through looking up to my father, and thank you for highlighting everything.
Well, thank you.
आसमां की कब है ताकत जो छुड़ाए लखनऊ, आसमां की कब है ताकत जो छुड़ाए लखनऊ, लखनऊ मुझ पर फिदा है, मैं फिदाए लखनऊ। तूने देखी है कहाँ रंगीनियाए लखनऊ, तूने देखी है कहाँ रंगीनियाए लखनऊ, लालाओ गुल के चमन है कूचाए लखनऊ। गुल से रंगी तर है, गुल से रंगी तर है खारे लखनऊ, नशे से बेहतर है खुमारे लखनऊ, नशे से बेहतर है खुमारे लखनऊ।
So our father did his PhD late in life. So he was very focused on learning. So he decided to do a PhD late in life. And then we all were impacted by him. So 2 of my siblings actually did their PhDs early in life. And so, and we hope that the next generation will take it from there. So it just happens that in our next generation, there are already 2 PhDs, or in there. So we're very excited about that. And then I would like to invite the next generation to bring up Daddy's books for unveiling. So please bring them on. Asad, Alim, Saif, Shabi, Elvira, Immu. So bring it to the, not, bring it to the table. Yeah. As we unveil them, we'll of course invite you to take a look at them. Yeah. So come on stage and open them up. Yeah. So, move a little bit this side. Again, thank you, and and thank you for coming, and we'll spend a few minutes with the books and then proceed on for lunch. And my brother will do a thank you.
Thanks, Javed. I wanted to thank everyone for coming here. And as you can see, this has been a special emotional journey for us. So really, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Sahai, for joining us over here. And of course, thanks to Dr. Triloki Pandey and Ryan Perkins for their messages and the reviews of the books. I did want to particularly thank my sister Simi for her untiring efforts for what has probably been a year in putting this editing and re-editing and getting the whole thing brought together. Waqar for coordinating all the videos and the work. I think he spent quite a bit of effort in running around and getting it together. Javed, thank you for getting the kids and juggling them and getting them organized. Zulfikar, for all your efforts in terms of providing the push and the effort to make this happen. I know it wasn't easy. We were all running around, and while trying to contribute, there were many events which were going on at the same time. But you did make it happen in time, and that's great. Mr. Harikesh, for all his efforts and running around and getting this together. And of course, last but not the least, the publisher for getting this collection together and making it happen. And I guess with that, I would like to invite you for lunch, so not stand in the way anymore. Please join us. Thank you.